Aquarius workshop, understanding the duality between distrust and naivety. I start with a quote from Password Lecture 258 with the title Personal Contact with Jesus Christ. All your fears and your distrust of others cannot be eliminated unless the total surrender to the highest is a constantly practiced and renewed act within yourself. Without that proper gravity in God, you will always be confused, live in fear, distrust your judgment, become either too distrustful in the wrong place and or too gullible in the wrong place. End of quote from Password Lecture 258. The unified plane of consciousness is the world of the divine center, the true self. On that plane, we are spiritually mature and we experience self-confidence and trust in God, as the two are inseparable, intertwined. We are masters if we submit to the nature of the mental, psychological, spiritual, and physical laws, because we have the humility to accept these laws and their unchangeable perfection. On the dualistic plane of consciousness, we fight against these laws, letting ourselves be led by a blind and ignorant ego with its rigid opinions, its illusions and conflicts, and its fear, pride, and self-will. In duality, divine qualities have been divided in incompatible opposites. Trust is transformed in distrust and naivety, and both are to the same extent present. Distrust is a hyperactive aspect, and naivety is an apathetic aspect. There is distrust if we do not trust ourselves, life, and others, because we do not accept ourselves. We are naive if we are too trusting or lose ourselves, and gullibility. Caught in this duality, we are unable to distinguish between people we can trust and people who are not to be trusted. Due to our fear of responsibility and our desire to depend on false authorities who promise all sorts of things, we often trust those who are unreliable, while we distrust those who encourage our independence. With this negative attitude of life, we distrust the voice of the true self and trust instead the voice of the little limited ego. Only when we use our best forces by constantly questioning ourselves about the truth and by practicing inner surrender to the highest powers will the distrust naivety duality merge into the divine quality of trusting. When we understand the distrust naivety duality, we also understand the attraction of lies and why false prophets, conspiracy theorists, and unreliable authorities have so much influence and have so many followers. In this workshop, you will investigate with a loving curiosity the duality between distrust and naivety on the basis of 3 themes from the Password Lectures. The first theme, Realize that there is an abundance of inner love. Any distrust we feel towards others and the universe is nothing but a projection of distrust toward ourselves, because we cannot accept living by our demanding standards. We cannot possibly experience trust without humble self-acceptance. But even if some of our aspects are caught in the distrust, naivety, duality, there already exists in us an abundance of love, truth, and trust, and much more. We only need to allow these divine qualities to surface, like the sun coming out from behind the clouds. Now follows a quote from Password Lecture 133. Where love exists, there must be successful human relationships, because in love's presence there is no fear, no distrust, no illusion. Love can flower only on the substantial soil of reality and fearlessness. Where one perceives reality in truth, one does not trust or distrust where it is inappropriate to do so. One accepts the other as he or she is, and adjusts one's own feelings to what the reality is. Then there is no necessity for groping in the dark, fearfully half trusting, half distrusting, thrown between one's needs and one's fears. End of quote from Password Lecture 133. The second theme. Listen to the inner voice of the true self. Our present suffering is caused by chasing false needs and continuously demanding their satisfaction. Only when we have the self-responsibility and discipline to be conscious about our needs and admit our childish irrationality, then we no longer lose ourselves in the distrust, naivety, duality, and can let go of our demands. Then feelings of self-respect, security, and trust increase, because we no longer block the inner voice of love, truth, and wisdom of the true self. Now follows a quote from Password Lecture 192. You will learn to recognize and trust the voice of truth and wisdom of your own innermost spiritual self when you come out of your darkness and when you plow your way between the two extremes. These extremes are the blind, wishful thinking, listening only to what you want to hear, which makes you deaf to the real truth in you, or the cynical distrust of all the deeper truths of your spiritual self, which make you equally deaf to the voice of truth. So you have to search your way between these two extremes. End quote from Password Lecture 192. The last and third theme. Surrender to God unifies the distrust, naivety, duality. It is only possible to unify the distrust, naivety, duality when we have the courage to face the truth. Only then is truth love and love truth. In our divine core, it is all about love. Love is the key to everything, and the universe is full of love. If we find our way back to the true self, to God's truth and God's reality, then the ego can safely surrender to the inner divine self and unify with God's will. Only then can we trust that God's will shall give us the best of life. The last quote stems from Password Lecture 254. You believe that you are safe only when you hold yourself separate, suspicious, and stiff. The truth is that by total surrender to God, you not only find true safety and security, you also become capable of surrendering to others if and when it is indicated and furthering for your life. Only when the total surrender to God exists is your channel clear enough to recognize truth from falsehood, to see who should and who should not be trusted and followed. End of quote. Password Lecture 254. For more information, look at my website. I wish you peace and all the best. Thank you.